everybody taking their seats, I am just going to start off with some announcements and some housekeeping. Thank you, Ellie. As always, we've got our Bibles and literature up here at the front bar. If anybody needs a Bible or wants a Bible, or even if you know somebody that wants a Bible and you want to take one to give it to them, please feel free to do that. They're there for anyone who needs them. If anybody is interested in helping out with the things that we do here, Saturdays at 3:15, we get together after the restaurant closes and move chairs and tables around, sweep the dining room, and sit down together and pray for our church service on Sunday, for Matt, for the girls leading worship, and for those who are coming. And then Sunday mornings around 8 o'clock, there's coffee that can be made, and obviously just another opportunity to pray. And then also on Tuesday evenings, as we're wrapping up, most of the time we do move the chairs and tables back into place for business on Thursday. So if anybody feels like helping with that, it'd be appreciated. The first Friday of every month, there is a ladies' fellowship night. And as it gets closer to that, Miss Carrie is the one who heads that up. So if any of y'all ladies are interested in coming to that, get with her. And as it gets closer, we'll let y'all know where it's going to be and exactly at what time. And then for the guys, we have a camping trip out at Cedar Bayou on April 19th and 20th, which is a Sunday and Monday. If any guys would like to go to that, it's a great time. We don't let Matt preach at all while we're there. It's just a time to hang out and eat some food that gets sand in it and try and catch some fish. And it's just a good time to hang out and just be guys. So one last thing is we are starting to put the audio for our Sunday and Tuesday teachings up on YouTube. And I flipped the board around so that y'all weren't confused with the verses on there because they're from Matt's teaching. But if anybody's interested in finding out what the YouTube is, Matt knows, and it is written on the board as well. So that's it for our things. I'm sure y'all will be hearing that a lot more than you want to, but we do it on Sundays and Tuesdays now because we have some people that come on Sundays and some on Tuesdays and not both. So all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start us off with a prayer. We can get into the book of Ruth. Lord, thank you for this day, for just a great crowd of folks who can take down 20 pounds of roast beef in an evening. It's a Texas special. So I just thank you for these folks, Lord, and just the hearts of love and compassion and fellowship that we have for one another. Just pray that you would instruct us through your word, that we would enjoy this story that has got a tinge of sorrow, but a huge amount of joy and rest and reconciliation and reward, Lord, and the foreshadowings that we have, the history that we have, and just the ability to see such a great story of love laid out before us in your word. Just pray that you would instruct us through it, teach it to us, to our hearts, and the lessons that are there for us. Amen. Okay, so we have been going through a rough season the last couple of months through the book of Judges. It has been intense, and it's been, I guess a word for it is unpleasant. In a lot of places, it was just straight up unpleasant. Lots of torment and anguish and false gods and punishment and all of those things that honestly didn't really end on a high note. But the good thing is that we get to have a high note this week and next week in the book of Ruth before we get into the book of Samuel. This is one of the greatest love stories in the Bible. I really enjoy it, and I think that y'all will as well. We're going to be going through it in two weeks, and so I kind of anticipate maybe the studies being a little bit shorter than normal. I might be wrong about that, but we'll see. The book of Ruth is in 4 chapters, and it's one of the books that I look at, and I think that whoever added the chapters in did the best job out of maybe any of the other books because it is so balanced and so well done. The first chapter is a chapter of decision. That's what we're going to be studying a lot about tonight. The decision that Ruth makes to say that Naomi's people will be her people and her God will be her God. The second chapter is about labor. It's about stepping out in faith and doing what needs to be done to provide and putting yourself in the position where God will work through your life. The third chapter is about rest, the rest that Naomi and her mother-in-law find with this man Boaz. And the fourth chapter is about reward. And the reward is the son that is born through their love. So that's the 4 chapters: decision, labor, rest, and reward. So it's a beautiful division. And so I was talking to Matt about this. It's kind of interesting. We see through the period of the judges, in the beginning, we see actually all the way back in the book of Joshua, a harlot or a prostitute in the city of Jericho named Rahab. Rahab is the mother of Boaz, who we're going to be looking at tonight. So Boaz's mother goes all the way back to when the people of Israel first come into the land. So it's likely that that Rahab was not necessarily a young woman. She, presumably had not been married before this incident with the Israelites. So she may have been, my guess is maybe in her, upper 20s or lower 30s, but she wasn't, like the normal girl of 16 or so that was married in this period. So she was older, and she married a man from the tribe of Judah named Salmon, very close to salmon, which is a funny name. But so she marries this man Salmon, and they have a son named Boaz. Now, we don't know whether Boaz had a previous wife to Ruth or what the situation was with that, but through the context we get in the book, he's an older man when he decides to marry Ruth and when she agrees to marry him. So that puts us a little ways at least into the period of the judges. We don't know exactly when this took place in that few 100-year period of the judges, but the only context that we get in exact terms is that verse 1 was the days when the judges ruled. That's the only time frame it gives us in specific. But we do have the context of the lineage of actually Jesus Christ, which we see, if you want to see where I'm getting all this from, it is in the book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 5. That's where these folks end up back in the biblical story again after this. So Boaz and Ruth get married, and they have a son named Obed. And then Obed has a son named Jesse, and Jesse has a son named David, who I'm sure we are all familiar with. That is King David, God's king of Israel. And so it's really interesting, in this period of a few 100 years of the judges, we only have 5 generations from the beginning to the end, at least in this family line. So that really is generations that span a lot of time. But I still do believe that puts us early on in the period of the judges. Interestingly, in the period when the people of Israel were in Egypt for 430 years, there was only 4 generations that took place in the land of Egypt. So that's even more remarkable, really. So this time with the period of the judges is not as extreme as that, but we see 5 generations played out in front of us from Rahab to David. So technically, David's not even in the period of the judges, but he's right there at the end. So all of that being said, kind of laying the groundwork for this, I'm going to go ahead and start in the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land." Now, this is unsurprising because what we saw in the book of Judges was the people walking away from God and being brought back to him at least 13 times, if not more. In the book of Deuteronomy, God tells the people of Israel, when you go into the land of Israel, the land will no longer be, or it won't be watered and provided for by a river like the Nile in Egypt, but I will provide rain for you from the sky. So God's kind of, giving them a paradigm shift. All these people had known was a land where it didn't rain and the ground was watered by a river. So he's kind of changing it up for them, because in the land of Israel, it rains. There aren't, the big floods like in the Nile. But he says he will send the rains as long as the people follow after him and do not follow after other gods. So the book of Judges didn't really specifically talk about famines, talked about a lot of battles that were fought against their enemies, but in my personal opinion, there was probably a lot of famines that happened on and off during the period of the judges, because the people were doing exactly what God said, the effect would be if they walked away from him, which they do, to follow after these other gods, that there would not be rain. So I don't know where this famine lies in the chronological history of the judges, but I have an assumption that it's probably only one of many that happened during that period. So there was famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. So Bethlehem is a word with the Jewish roots that mean the house of bread. So Bethlehem was a place pretty close to the city of Jerusalem, or at this time it would be Jebus, because it had not been taken by the people of Israel yet. But it's kind of right in the center of the story that we see taking place in the Holy Land. So it is a place that was kind of the breadbasket of Israel. There was always bread in the house. So it is called Bethlehem, the house of bread. And it is in the territory of Judah. And Judah is going to figure prominently in this because this whole story is included largely because it brings forward for us the genealogy of the Messiah. And he was the Lion of the tribe of Judah. The scepter will not pass from the hand of Judah. So so it's laying out for us that this is a prophetic situation because it is taking place in the land of Judah and specifically in the city of Bethlehem. So the man's name was Elimelech, which means my God is king. And the name of his wife was Naomi, which means it means pleasant. And the names of their two sons were Mahlon and Chilion, which interestingly, Mahlon means sickly and Chilion means pining or wasting away. So we have my God is king and pleasantness. My guess is that because of the fact that children are often named after the circumstances of their birth, just as Jacob was named Jacob because he caught the heel of his brother as he was being born, and his brother Esau was a hairy baby, so they named him Esau, which means hairy. It's pretty common in this time for their names to mean the circumstances of their birth. So I would believe that Mahlon was born, premature or ill in some way, so he was called sickly, and the same thing with the brother, that he was pining or wasting away or tired. So it's kind of funny. My God is king and pleasantness got sick and tired. They didn't mean to, but they got sick and tired. So that was the name of the sons. So it's possible, if not likely, that the sons were born during the period of a famine. If they were both born sickly and weary. So they were Ephrathites, which basically Ephra is the area surrounding Bethlehem and Judah. It's almost like a province or like a county inside of Israel. So a larger geographical area would be Israel, which would be like the United States. Judah would be like the state, Texas. Ephrathah would be the county, like Aransas County, and then Bethlehem would be the town, like Rockport. They had similar divisions like that. But when it says in the Bible that somebody was an Ephrathite, or given the nomination of the name of their area, it means that they were typically prominent people in that area. Not just that they were from there, but they were prominent in that area, which we're going to see that in this same time. The brethren, or might be brother or close relative, Boaz is a mighty man. He is a great man in this area. So it's likely that Elimelech at one point was as well. So all of that being said, we have the names, the meanings, and the place. They left Bethlehem and Judah and went to the country of Moab. They remained there, but Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her two sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. So Orpah is a Moabite name that means fawn, so like a young deer, which typically, from what I've seen, was given because of the gracefulness of a child. So this woman was, in appearance and in form and in behavior graceful, like a young deer. And Ruth basically means beauty or attractive appearance. So we have two evidently desirable young women that are marrying sick and tired. I don't know how they managed that, but they did. So they lived there for about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the women were left, or the woman was left without her two sons or her husband. So this was a very rough period in the life of Naomi, and we're going to see that it affects her deeply and causes her to believe that the Lord is putting a severe and strict judgment upon her life. So verse 6 says that she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So again, looking back to the period of the judges, I would believe that in the intervening time that she was gone in Moab, the people probably came back to the Lord under the influence of one of the judges. Again, we're not told that. That's just me kind of interpreting through what we see here, that for a period of time, God had taken his hand of blessing off the people, and now he has given his blessing back. That happened when a judge came and conquered the enemies of the people, and they had rest for a period of time. So I believe what we're looking at here is one of those periods of rest that were shown in the book of Judges. So she has a knowledge in her heart that she was not where she belonged. She knew that she was intended by God to be among her people. And I'm sure that as a young woman of Israel at one point, raised up in these families that did have at least some traditions, she knew about the stories of Abraham and Isaac fleeing from the very land that she was in to Egypt and away from the promised land because of famines. And she likely knew that story always ended eventually with the people coming back. And so it would have been ingrained in her to know that she was to come back to the land of Israel. There was probably a question in her mind over whether she was being punished or whether her husband was being punished for leaving the land of Israel in the first place. We're going to see that she has this feeling on her heart because of her circumstances, because of the death of her husband and her sons, that she was being punished by God and that his favor was being taken off of her life. So she wants to return back where she knows that she belongs. So verse 7 says that she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. So it doesn't seem that Naomi has the concept that these girls are planning to go back to Israel and live with her. It seems that she probably thought, at least in the beginning of this journey, that they were maybe walking her back to the Jordan River, back to, the border of Israel, so that they could send her across, that she would enter back into relative safety, and then they would go home. In this time, the period of the Judges, and even later, Gentile women in the land of Israel were treated very poorly by the people of Israel, by the men specifically. If these girls decide to go and live with their mother-in-law, the most likely scenario is that they will not find a husband, because the men of Israel are at least should not want to marry these women. Now, it was not forbidden for the Israelites to marry a Moabite woman. It wasn't forbidden specifically, but it was traditional among the people of Israel that they should be marrying amongst their own people. And it was pretty common in this day. I mean, we saw in the book of Judges, the last thing that we read about was the tribe of Benjamin murdering a woman by sexually abusing her. That was either close before or similar to this period of time, where a lot of the men in Israel seemingly did not have respect for women. Really, throughout a lot of history, women had a very sad role to live in life, until ultimately Jesus was the one that lifted women to an equal standing with men and gave them the respect and the honor that they deserve. But Naomi knows that her daughter-in-laws, even though she loves them, are not likely to be safe in Israel. And even if they are safe, they're not likely to have a fulfilling and happy life, because they are going to be put on the outskirts of society. So she rightfully wants them to go back. But what she also is going to do is consign them to go back to their false gods and to the people who serve their false gods. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may become husbands? Turn back, my daughters, and go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I have a husband this night and bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So by context, in saying that she kissed her, that means that she decided to leave and go back to her people, to her gods, to her family. So, the obvious context that is put before us here is that these people, specifically Naomi, understood the concept of a Levirate marriage. So Naomi had 2 sons, and she had, a kind of burden for her husband to have sons that could carry on their father's name in Israel. It was very important that the name of a man and of a household was not wiped out in Israel. And so to that effect, we see all the way back in Genesis that Judah, one of the sons of Jacob, one of the fathers of a tribe of Israel, had a son who married a girl, and the son died before this woman bore any children, and so he gives his next son in line to her to have children to propagate his name. But this son was unwilling to have children on behalf of his brother, and did some things that were abominable in the Lord's sight, and the Lord put him to death because of it. And so Judah had one more son remaining at this point, and he was a boy. He was not ready to marry yet. And so he waited to marry or even promise this son to her until he was old enough. But when he came of age, he did not give him to her as husband. And so she saw that her hope of him acting honorably was gone. And so she goes, she knows that he is headed off to shear his sheep. And so she goes and says she takes off the clothes of her widowhood and puts on the clothes of a prostitute. And she goes by the roadside, and he propositions her, and they end up conceiving a child together. And that child is the son in whom Judah's line will continue. He is one of the ancestors of Jesus Christ and of Boaz at this point. So it's interesting that all takes place in the line of Judah. But I think that evidently Naomi's mind is going back to that situation, and that she knows the rightful thing for these women would be to marry sons that she had if they were going to go with her. Also, I think, like I said, she knew that if they came back with her, they were very unlikely to find a husband in the land of Israel. So in her mind, this may have been the only hope. So because of all those circumstances, she is just encouraging these young women to go back to their parents, because she doesn't feel that she can be responsible for their lives anymore at this point. So she encourages them to go back. The one, Orpah, does go back, but Ruth clings to her. She said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or return from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me also, and more, if anything but death parts me from you." So she has committed at this point her life. This is the moment of decision in chapter 1. This is why I say chapter 1 is a chapter of decision. She has made a decision not only to entangle her life permanently with Naomi, but also, in a sense, she has given her life over to Yahweh. She knows, and I say that specifically because she says, "May the Lord do this to me more and also and more." So she is referencing Yahweh, the name of God, Jehovah. So she knows who she is speaking of, and she has committed her life to him and to her mother-in-law. So Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, and so she said no more. So the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. So that is about a 60-mile journey for these women, a journey that is in no way safe. They had no protection whatsoever. They had no assurance of getting where they were going, other than Naomi's belief in her heart that she was going where she belonged. That's what was taking her where she was going. We don't have any indication that she was struggling or suffering in the land of Moab. It doesn't say that she was starving, so she had to go back to her people. What we see, through the context is she is going back because she knows, again, that is where she belongs. So they come to Bethlehem, and when they come to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" So she said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and I came back empty. The Lord has brought me back empty. Why then call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, returned with her from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So gosh, that is full of things to talk about. They are coming back, and the reason that they left, it's important to keep in mind, is because they were starving to death. That's why they left. But we see here that Naomi's heart and her mind have been changed by the circumstances of her life. Because what does she say when these people see her and say, surely that can't be Naomi? She only left 10 years ago and she looks 30 years older. Surely that can't be her because she left with a husband and 2 sons and she's coming back with 1 daughter-in-law. So she left full and came back empty. What an amazing testimony to the things that are important in life, right? This woman has come to the understanding of what lies before her, what lies behind her, and what truly matters. They lost their possessions. We know that because they're going to try to redeem her field. They sold their home. They sold their field. They sold everything, and they were starving, and they had to leave the land. There was, humiliation. There was defeat. There was hunger. There was more than likely illness. But she realizes that because she had her family and she had her relationship with God, she felt that when she left, even though there was a famine, she still felt that she had the favor of the Lord on her side. And now she is coming back, assumably with her stomach full, not starving, but she is coming back without her husband and without her sons. And what seems even more of a burden on her heart, she feels that she is coming back without the favor of the Lord and without his presence in her life. That is the emptiness that she is crying out about. She doesn't even say to these people, I went away full and the Lord brought me back empty. The Lord has testified against me and he has taken my husband and my sons. She says that calamities come upon her because she believes that the Lord has abandoned her. And we're going to see that her heart is turned from that, which is a beautiful thing. Because she sees sorrow and loss in her life, she believes that the Lord has abandoned her. And yet she doesn't see the small things that the Lord is doing for her in this time. She doesn't understand the way that the Lord is still providing for her in every moment. She seems to have lost track of the fact that even though she lost her husband and her sons, she has gained this woman who has decided to knit her life to hers and to become not in marriage and not as God talks about with marriage, but they've almost become one. She has sworn her life to her. And the Lord has provided this young woman to bring a redeemer into Naomi's life, and she doesn't yet know it. She has got this concept in her mind that is very common to people. It's been common to me in my life. And that is that when somebody that we love dies, it is because the Lord has taken them from us, right? That's very easy to feel that way. But when you actually boil everything down and study the word, what the Lord gave humanity originally was life. He did not give us death. He gave us life. He gave us the world. And he gave us the freedom to live on it in absolute freedom except for one thing. And that one thing, Adam and Eve chose to partake of anyway. God did not give us death. Death was brought to us by one man. That wasn't God. It was by Adam. And so as humans, and especially as believers, when we have a death in our lives, we should not ever look at it as the Lord taking them from us, because that's not accurate. Sin took them from us. The decision of man took them from us, but God did not. What we really are looking at is a Mary and Martha kind of situation, right? Where, Lord, if you had only come sooner, if you had only been here, my brother would not have died. So when we are in our hearts blaming God for a death, what we're saying is, Lord, you could have kept them from dying right now. Technically, that's true. That part of it is true. God at any point could keep somebody from dying, but the only thing that is common to all man is death. And again, not brought to us by God, but brought to us because of the sin and decision of man. When I reference Mary and Martha, I'm talking obviously about their brother Lazarus dying and being in the tomb, and they sent for Jesus in enough time for him to save him. They knew in their hearts that he was God. They knew. They believed it. And yet Jesus, when he receives this news, decides to stay at the Jordan River for 2 more days. And then he leaves to go back, and he tells his disciples that Lazarus is asleep. And his disciples, missing the point, has always said, well, that's good. If he's sleeping, he'll recover anytime. But the truth is, and Jesus tells them, that he is glad that he was not there, because he knew that he would have saved Lazarus. It's a fascinating thing. And he said, for your sake, it's a good thing that I wasn't there, because God needed to be glorified through this situation. But when they get there, Mary and Martha kind of give Jesus the business and say, man, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. That's so easy as Christians for us to have that same perspective, or for Naomi to have that perspective, that if God had only been blessing me, he would have kept that person here for me. He would have kept him here or her to minister to me, to have this relationship with me that I count on, to take care of me, to have fun with me, to be my friend. So what are we talking about? We're talking about our own loss. Because especially for us as Christians, when we die, when we go to be with the Lord, his glory is going to be revealed to us, which is so far beyond anything that we can imagine. And that reward is so far beyond anything that we can have on earth. For us who die as Christians, there's no tragedy in it. The tragedy is for the people who are left behind, because it hurts and it's painful. But the death of those that we love is not a sign of God's punishment on our life. It's not a sign that God has abandoned us. And Naomi's going to find that out. She is going to say, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. She sees the provision of God, and she realizes God's kindness has not departed from me. When she says the living, she's talking about herself. And it seems through this situation, Naomi's going to have a change of heart, and she is going to realize the provision of God in her life. So all that being said, when she comes back from Moab to Bethlehem at the time of the barley harvest, she decides that she wants to be called Mara, which is bitterness, because she feels that the Lord has dealt bitterly with her, because she misunderstands the relationship that the Lord has with his people. So chapter 2, verse 1, Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech. Now, a lot of translations have a lot of different words for this worthiness. Some say a man of great valor. Some say a man of great wealth. My translation just says a worthy man. It's kind of disappointing. It takes a lot of the fun out of it, but those other translations give you the context that he was likely not only wealthy in earthly possessions, but that also in this time of conflict with all of the neighboring countries in the time of the judges, that Boaz was also a man who stood and protected what was his, and took care of his family, and he took care of his land, and he took care of what the Lord had given to him. It says he is a man of great valor. That's cool. But I don't know, God also told Gideon that he was a man of great valor when he was hiding in the winepress. So I don't really know what to say about this one way or the other, but Boaz is a cool dude. His name means to strengthen, or to lift up, or to hold up. We're going to see in the days of the temple, when Solomon's building the temple, one of the 2 pillars that hold up the front of the temple is named Boaz. I don't know that it's named after this guy. I think it's just because the word Boaz means strengthened or strength. But either way, it's a picture of what kind of guy this was. He is a man of integrity, a man of love, a man of peace, and a man of war, which is cool. But he's also a man who is following after the Lord in a time when the people are not, right? That's something to keep in mind, is that the time period that we're looking at in Ruth here is a time where the people are constantly going away from the Lord. And that picture is given to us over and over and over again in the book of Judges. But in the background of that, we don't see it in the book of Judges, but in the background of that, we have a woman named Naomi, and a woman named Ruth, and a man named Boaz, who are seeking out the Lord in their lives and doing what is right, interestingly, in the eyes of the Lord and not of themselves, because the book of Judges ends by saying, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. But in this time, Ruth, Naomi, Boaz, they are doing what is right in the eyes of the Lord. And the reward for them in that is that they are put before us. And they are not only put before us in the book of Ruth, but also in the book of Matthew, in the lineage of Jesus Christ himself, a Moabite woman whose heart is seen to be worthy enough by the Lord to be in the lineage of Jesus Christ. So this man named Boaz, cool dude. Verse 2 says, Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor. So this takes us again back to the book of Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, in which the Lord lays forth his plan for the welfare state. I like it a lot better than our welfare state. The Lord's idea of social security was, number one, the family. And number two, when you don't have a family, the people in the land were not allowed to go back and harvest a second time. In their vineyards, in their orchards, they could go and pick what was ripe one time. And anything else that was left had to be left for the widows, for the orphans, and for the sojourners. Interestingly, Ruth is each one of those things. She is the archetype of who God put this in place to provide for. So I love that. This is a beautiful fulfillment of the welfare that God put in place for his people. It's actually for the welfare of his people. So not only are they not allowed to go back and harvest a second time, but also as they're going through the fields with their sickles and with their scythes, they are cutting down the grain, tying it up into sheaves and carrying those sheaves out of the field. Inevitably, what happens in that situation is some of the stalks of grain are dropped and left in the field. Now, they're not allowed to go back and pick all those up again. The widows, the orphans, and the sojourners are allowed to go after them and pick all of those up. Now, interestingly, even adding another layer on top of that, the law states that you can go into your neighbor's field while the crops are standing and you can eat whatever you need to live at any time. You don't have to ask. You don't have to get permission. You can get the sustenance out of the field to sustain life, but you cannot take a basket or anything with you to collect and take it out of the field with you. But in this context of gleaning, which Ruth and the other widows are doing, they're able to go and collect as much as they can throughout the entire time of harvest and take it to their home in order to provide for themselves for the rest of the year. So, that's the full picture of the welfare system. And interestingly, in this time, they had many different harvests throughout the years. They had the barley harvest, the wheat harvest, that, there was, they were spaced out. So not only could they have time to harvest everything, but also the poor, the orphan, the widow, and the sojourner in the land had provision for a long period through the year and could collect a lot to sustain themselves. So the coolest part of all of it is they didn't have a group of, a men's group from the church go out and do the gleaning and drop it off at the widow's house or drop it off at the orphanage or whatever. God gives these people the dignity of going to the field themselves and, gleaning what they needed to live. That is a beautiful picture of how the Lord sees every one of us with dignity. We've all been given a different role in life. We've all been given different situations, but the Lord sees each and every one with dignity. So that was a huge over-explanation. So we're going to keep going. So she tells her to go. And verse 3 says she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And this is a funny term. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. Now, I believe that's the author or the rabbis or even the Holy Spirit being a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Because as I'm sure all of y'all have heard, coincidence is not a kosher word. Coincidence doesn't happen in the Bible. The King James says that it was her hap to go to the field of Boaz. And that's not the case. The Lord was directing her in the most mundane part of life to her Redeemer. He was calling her to the man who was to be her Redeemer. He was drawing her through what is just such a plain, ordinary circumstance of life. There was no, beeping and clicking inside of her head. I don't think she was, seeing anything like directing her where to go. The Lord just put it on her heart where to go. And she went there and she gleaned in this field. And says that she happened to come to the part of the field that belonged to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Jerusalem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless you. So this shows the kind of relationship that this man, Boaz, who is a wealthy, mighty man of valor, who is a worthy man in the land of Israel in this time of rebellion against the Lord, that these men who work for him clearly have respect for him, and he has respect for them. They greet each other the way that we're instructed to greet each other in the New Testament, right? It's a greeting of love one for another. And so it just, again, gives us another kind of glimpse into his character, a man who sees his workers with respect and treats them with respect. So Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? So, this is a small community. Everybody likely knows everybody. And he knows his workers, and he comes there and he sees a face that he doesn't recognize, and he's like, dang, who is that? That's the English translation, right? And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, she is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. And she said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. So Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter. So again, this gives a context of a kind of broad age difference between the two of them. A man who calls this young woman his daughter. That would be a indication of an age gap. So he says, listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but be close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? So that gives a little bit of an indication that in the land of Israel in this time, it was not safe to be a young woman who was away from her family, out of the house, and in a field by herself. So Boaz has charged his young men not to touch her. And I would assume by context, he has charged them not to let anybody else touch her either, right? She's kind of marked as somebody he is interested in, obviously. So he says, when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? That's a beautiful question that rings throughout the ages, and for all of us as Christians, right? Speaking to God, speaking to Jesus, who, it turns out in many ways, Boaz is a picture of Jesus and of his role, right? And we're going to get into a lot more of that next week, so I'm not going to go into that much of it this week, but it's just beautiful for her to say, why have I found favor in your eyes, for I am a foreigner? For the Gentile church, that is such a profound question, right? For all of us, even for the Jews, it's profound. Like Matt's been talking about on Sunday, that God didn't look down and say, man, you're such a good little sinner, I'm going to send my son to die for you. Or the quote that I like, God doesn't look down and say, oh, you guys are so cute, I'm going to take care of you, right? No, it's an unmerited favor. And that's what Ruth sees in this situation. She sees Boaz's favor for her as unmerited, but she doesn't know the full story in this circumstance yet. She fell on her face, bowing to the ground. Verse 11. But Boaz answered her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother in your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and have spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers and he passed her roasted grain. She ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until the evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. So this young woman has been shown a lot of favor by this man, who is clearly has an interest in her. And he not only instructs his young men not to rebuke her, which in the Hebrew means not to humiliate her, is basically what they're saying. And he even instructs the guys, when you've cut the grain down and it's laying on the ground ready to be tied up, even let her go among those and collect what she wants to collect. Nobody else was allowed to do that. And even beyond that, he instructs his young men to kind of drop a little bit here and there so that she can pick up extra. So, Boaz is kind of twofold. He is showing his interest for her and his heart for her, but he's also showing that he is an honorable man who is interested in taking care of the widows and orphans and sojourners that God has put in their midst to take care of. So this is, from all appearances, just a man of sterling character who was put before us in this book. So she gleans an ephah of barley. That is about a 5-gallon bucket that would be brimming over the top. So that is a lot of grain that she has collected. That would be enough to live on, I believe for at least a month, if not more, depending on how much you're eating. So this is a big thing for her, and Naomi's gonna see it as well. So verse 18 says that she took it up and went to the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. So that would be the roasted grain that it referred to just a minute ago, that she ate as much as she wanted, took the rest home for her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law whom she had worked. "The man's name with whom I worked today was Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." And Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, and he is one of our redeemers." So this concept of redeemers goes back to, again, to the Levirate marriage, in which says if brothers dwell together. So this is specifically for brothers who dwell not in the same household, but in the same city. So in other words, you don't have to travel across the country to go do this if you don't live together. But if you live together and your brother dies without having any children, then the other brother is to marry that woman and have children with her. And the first son is to be named after the dead brother so that his name does not die out in the people of Israel. So those would be redeemers. And also on another level, in the land of Israel, in the inheritance that God gave the people, land was to stay in the family for eternity, for perpetuity, throughout all of your generations. So land could be sold, but it was not permanent. If the land was sold, it's really more of a leasing situation. In the year of Jubilee, which is every 49th year, the land would go back to the original owners, and it would be all debts would be forgiven, and the land would be assessed at its value back to that family. And so basically, if you were wanting to buy a piece of property, the reason to buy it would be to use it for agriculture. That's what they use property for, or mining even. And it would be assessed how much value could be produced off of that land each year. And, if there was, you could raise $1,000 of wheat. Then if there was 10 years left to the Jubilee, then you could purchase that piece of land for, 10,000 less a little bit for you to make profit. That's how it was done. But on the other hand, if you sell your piece of property and then come into a different situation where you can buy it back, you have the right to redeem it. Or if you die and your land has been sold, your close relative can redeem it. That is the exact situation that we're looking at. The man Elimelech has died, but before he died, he was in poverty, so he had to sell his land. We don't know who he sold it to, and that doesn't really matter. But the point is that Naomi, as a woman, doesn't have the right to purchase this land back because she is merely married into the family. So even if she purchased it, she can't keep it because she is no longer in that family anymore because her husband has died. So the Redeemer has to be the closest male relative of the same family. Now, it turns out there is a closer male relative, and we're going to see that next week, but Boaz is the next after that. So that is what makes Boaz their close redeemer, their kinsman redeemer, all of those circumstances put together. And it is evident to Naomi that God directed Ruth's path to cross with Boaz and to bring them together so that he could be the redeemer for their life. And so she sees by this circumstance that the Lord has not abandoned them. So Ruth in verse 21, the Moabite says, "Besides, he said to me, you shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest." Now, it doesn't just mean the barley harvest. That means all of the harvest. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So again, it's not safe for these young women to be out there. Even culturally, in this day in the Middle East, young women do not go outside of their household without like a guardian or without a man, because it is not seen as safe for them to be away from their protectors. So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So our next chapter, I'm just going to read the first verse. It begins with, Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" So that is going to be the theme for chapter 3 is finding rest. And then chapter 4 is going to be the reward that Ruth and Boaz have together. But it's kind of cool to be leaving on a high note. This last month or two, it's just been one downer after another. So next week is going to be really fun because, we haven't got to see a whole lot of the interaction between these two yet, but it's cool to see the power of literature for us in our lives, that we can feel kind of viscerally the feeling that these two end up having for each other, the relief, the joy, and the reward that they find in their relationship with one another. So it's a good reason for everybody to come back next week and get to hear even more fun. Lord, just thank you for this great, encouraging, uplifting story that you put before us. I just pray, Lord, that you would help us to each pay attention in our lives and see the little provisions that you make for us in our lives each day. And pray also that you would be help us to be sensitive to the leadings and the urgings that you give us in life. Ruth was obviously sensitive to your leading, even if she didn't know it, and you led her exactly where she needed to be. And Lord, you have a plan for each one of our lives, and you have a plan for how we can be used for your kingdom to love others, to reach them with your gospel. So I pray that you would help each one of us to be sensitive to those leadings, and I pray that we would each have on our hearts each day to be used for you, be used by you, and to be used in your kingdom. Amen. All right. Any questions?